Palaestra at Olympia. Architecture. The Palaestra at Olympia is part of the gymnasium at the sanctuary. This 66-meter square building dates to the end of the 3rd or beginning of the 2nd century BC. A building in ancient Greece devoted to the training of wrestlers and other athletes. The Palaestra is oriented precisely to the cardinal points and is very symmetrical in plan. Like all Palaestra, the Palaestra at Olympia is centered around a large courtyard covered with sand for use as a boxing or wrestling surface. Along all 4 sides of the Palaestra are rooms that opened onto the porticos. The building is entered through the south side through 2 separate doorways, each with Corinthian columns distal in antes, thus immediately establishing symmetry within the plan of the structure. The doorways open into bench-lined vestibules leading to anterooms that open directly onto the southern portico. Between the 2 anterooms is a long, shallow hall lined with benches and faced with Ionic columns. This room is identified as the apoditerion, or undressing room, a space that would need to be close to the main entrance and have room for athletes and friends to meet. Directly across from the apoditerion, along the north side of the Palaestra is the Ephebion, or clubroom. This large, colonnaded hall is deeper than the apoditerion but does not run the entire length of the courtyard. The entire north side of the Palaestra has deep rooms, a feature mentioned by Vitruvius, which offered shelter from the sun. Also in the north side of the building is a doorway that leads directly into the rest of the adjoining gymnasium space. The room in the northeast corner of the Palaestra is identified as a bathroom. The brick-lined, 4-meter square and 1.38-meter deep tank found here is dated to the Roman period, however. An unusual feature of the Palaestra is the 24.20 by 5.44-meter strip of concrete pavement on the north side of courtyard, which is formed with alternate bands of ribbed and smooth tiles arranged to create continuous ridges stretching the length of the pavement. This was probably a sort of bowling alley, as suggested by a similar pavement found at Pompeii with heavy stone balls on it. It is not possible to say for what most of the other rooms lining the porticos were used. Since Olympia had no resident population, the Palaestra and gymnasium would not have included spaces for lectures or intellectual discourse and would have been used primarily by competitors in the sanctuary games. The stone benches found in 6 of rooms would certainly have been used by athletes and spectators rather than by intellectuals. The unidentified rooms of the Palaestra would have included rooms such as the Eliothesian or oil store, the Conisterian or dusting room, rooms for storing athletic apparatus, and a few spherosteria, which were rooms or open courts for ball play. The Palaestra is situated west of the Altis enclosure, near the Cladios River. Built in the 3rd century BC as part of the gymnasium complex, it was used to practice boxing, wrestling and jumping. This almost square building, 66.35 x 66.75 meters, stands 0.70 meters lower than the gymnasium. At its center was an open court, 41 meters square, surrounded by a Doric colonnade of 72 columns and laid with fine sand on which the athletes trained. The columns and lower courses of the walls were of stone, the upper courses of the walls of brick and the entablature of wood. Round the court were rooms of various sizes, most of them with Ionic porches, in which the athletes anointed their bodies with oil, Elaiothecian, or powdered them with dust, conisterian, and dressed and washed. Some of the rooms retain stone benches, used by orators and philosophers for teaching and social intercourse. An Ionic colonnade lined the elongated space in the south wing. Originally, the Palaestra had two entrance doors on its south side, but a Doric propylon with 4 columns on the facade was added later on the north side. This became the main entrance to the building, while a small doorway also on the north side allowed access to the adjacent gymnasium. The Palaestra was excavated and studied by the German school in recent years. Only the lower, stone-built parts are preserved, and 32 of the 72 columns of the internal peristyle have been restored.